Welcome to the Rant Live. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. Friday, April 29th. And the Cubs just finished a 3-game series against the Atlanta Braves that wasn't a total disaster, but it certainly wasn't great. There were more bad things that happened than good things, but there were very few really bad things that happened, and there were very few really good things that happened.
The best thing about the series was Wilson and William Contreras being able to meet at home plate to exchange the lineup cards before last night's game. That was like that. I mean, that and Patrick Wisdom's home run are literally the only two things I remember about the entire series. That's it.
Yeah,
that
sounds about right.
I'm not exaggerating. I do not remember the first game. That was on Tuesday, right? Well, my son had a baseball game, and my in-laws were in town to watch the game, which of course, and it's like, you know, they rotate around at a few different spots, and so it's the one game when he didn't start. Right? He's played first base the whole time. He's played every inning. And we were walking in there, and I told my wife, I was like, "Watch, your parents are they're gonna have driven over here, you know, an hour and a half one way to see this. He's not gonna play." And that ended up almost being the case. But anyway, so then they were over. I didn't even watch that game at all, so I don't remember it. Wednesday.
Oh, I'll remind you.
No, I'm sorry. That was a wisdom game. So that part I remember because I watched the very end of it because they were gone. I don't really remember the Wednesday one. Thursday, again, same deal.
Wednesday was the wisdom game.
I'm sorry. Wednesday was a wisdom game. That's it. Tuesday was what was Tuesday? What happened Tuesday? See, I'm all
Tuesday.
Sort of
so let's go. The Cubs.
It was Wednesday that he played that I missed the whole game until the end. So yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Remind me.
That was the best game.
Yeah.
The Cubs on Tuesday. The Cubs fell to the Braves by the score of 3-1. Marcus Stroman had a quality start. That was good.
Yeah.
6 innings, 3 runs. 2 of them earned, 6 hits, no walks, 3 strikeouts. Not great, but good, very good.
Which we had kind of. I want to throw that out there. I was like, we gotta call out our W's. I feel like we're both kind of in the camp of like, he's gonna pitch better. It won't be some lights out crazy start, but he's gonna start getting better. He's gonna start.
It wasn't as bad as his previous 2.
Oh no, not close to that. So I think it was definitely a move in the right direction. But carry on because I want to remember what happened.
Yes, definitely. So I mean, it really was the 5th inning that undid Stroman. He gave up a solo home run and then 2 singles and an error by Hermosillo, which caused 2 or the 3 runs to score. Actually, all 3 runs. And so Roberts came in, and you felt like he got right in that game. He pitched 1 inning and struck out 3. Really looked good. And so, you know, it wasn't a terrible game. It was a good game from a pitching perspective, but the offense was just dead. Ian Happ had a solo home run, and the Cubs had 4 total hits. No one had a multi-hit game, and it was just really, really a bad offensive.
That's right, because Happ hit a home run from the right side against Max Fried, who's a really good pitcher, obviously. And then Happ has really been doing a lot better. That's the one thing I remember now. Okay, now I'm starting to get dialed in. It's starting to come out. I'm starting to remember.
That's what this show's about, baby.
Yeah,
to remind everyone.
We want a show about the Chicago Cubs, and one of the hosts has no idea what's happened in the last 3 games. This is the kind of quality preparation.
I actually looked everything up. So, Wednesday was a good day. Wednesday was a really good day. The Cubs won that game 6-3. That was an incredible game because David Ross actually did something that made sense, which was start Mark Leiter for 2 innings, and then he brought in Keegan Thompson for 3 innings. And so that made a lot of sense. He kind of went with the starter thing there.
Wow.
And it was nice. And Leiter had 2 hits in 2 innings, 1 walk, was good, right? And the 3rd inning has been really rough for Leiter, and so Thompson comes in. Wasn't lights out, but he was still pretty good. 3 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, a little wild.
Gave up his first run of the season, right?
He's got a .54 ERA on the season. So that's really good. And then Givens came in and just kind of blew up completely. 2/3 of an inning, 3 hits, 2 runs, a walk, 2 Ks, and he came out really good. He had 2 strikeouts, and then he gave up 2 singles, a walk, and another single, and he did not stay in the game. But the Cubs did well. I mean, their offense did well. They scored 6 runs on 11 hits, 6 walks.
Mm-hmm.
That was the 10th inning. Where they didn't do well was the fact that Givens let the Braves back into the game. The Cubs were up there. They should have won 3-1, and instead it went to 10. And it was like one of those games where you're like, oh, no, this isn't going to – the Cubs aren't going to lose this, are they? Luckily, Wisdom came out and just absolutely crushed a 2-run home run, but that was
after Contreras had doubled home Happ, which was nice because it was interesting. They were talking about the strategy of that, and this is again where the runner on second thing is so silly to me. It's kind of like it's not quite the same as the college football overtime rules, but it's sort of similar in terms of like if the first team in college, if they just kick a field goal, then the second team plays really conservatively. And as they were talking about, like if the first team doesn't score in the top of the 10th, that's when you see the bunt come into play, because now all you've got to do is get that guy over to third with just 1 out. And, again, he could be stranded. But it was nice, first of all, for him to score that run. But then once Wisdom hit the homer, then it was like, ooh, okay, now we can breathe. Because a 1-run lead with a runner starting on second and no outs does not feel very safe. But the Wisdom homer, going back to like what we've said over and over and over again, that was a game in which they had rattled off some hits. Unfortunately, they hadn't done anything for like 6 innings. What they scored in the second and the third, I think, and then just kind of went blank for a while. Both teams sort of did, for the longest time. But then, lo and behold, hey, a home run with a guy on base. Holy shit, that actually helps. So, anyway, that was.
It's nice when that happens.
Yeah,
you can get that going.
Unfortunately, it doesn't happen for very often.
And we've got here's something that I just wanted to comment on is that we've got a commenter said a win is ... This is what I think is really funny is when I read a comment that says something like, that was a good win. I have never seen a bad win. When is it a bad win?
I think the only way you could have a bad win, and this is going to be some mental gymnastics, would be if it's late and especially with there's more teams in the playoffs, right? And if it's a seeding thing to where you have a terrible matchup with a certain team. Okay. And if you win, it would push you into a matchup with them because maybe they're not the best team in the league, but you don't match up with them well.
You've already won enough. You've already had enough good wins. Air quoting.
So another win might actually be worse. Or let's say
might not be a good win.
Or if you're trying to set up your rotation, right, and you win, but a guy gets hurt in the win. Because you played all your starters, right? That's the only time. And the win itself is not bad, but playing to win in that given situation ends up costing you. But those are all kind of like, that's really parsing through it. Otherwise, at this stage in the game, winning is good, period.
Yeah. So people, if you're listening, please stop saying that was a good win. Because every time I see that, if it's regular season and doesn't have anything to do with, seeding and who you might play in the playoffs or anything like that, every win is a good win. So sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. Moving on. So, Suzuki and Madrigal both had 2 hits on Wednesday, which was good. And both had a double. And so that was nice. Thursday, not so good. Smiley still looked pretty good. 4 2/3 innings. Gave up a couple of runs on 5 hits, a walk, 4 Ks. Unfortunately, 2 home runs in the first and the third, but they were solo home runs, so not terrible. But Ethan Roberts just completely blew up he went from his Tuesday domination to 1 inning, 4 hits, 3 runs, 2 strikeouts, single, double, 2-run home run. And that kind of did the Cubs in, although their offense was again atrocious. Very comparable
3 hits
to Monday. 3 hits, 4 walks, and a run.
And the only run they scored was because Nico Horner got picked off and got hung up between first and second long enough for was it VR to score? Whatever the case, like they got 2 walks from a guy who's only walked 2 batters all season. Kyle Wright only walked 2 batters in 3 starts. Walks the first 2 batters of the second inning. So you're okay, cool. Oh, this is a great chance for a rally. Maybe he's rattled. Now he's going to start trying to throw strikes and maybe dial it back a little bit. And then they get a ground out and a strikeout. And now you've got like a runner on third, and then Horner on the ground out. He ended up still at first. And then he gets picked off. And the only reason they scored was because he got hung up long enough. And the defensive players totally forgot about the runner at third and just let him walk home. But here's the thing about Smiley. And this is something that is very concerning to me. We talked about this a little bit. He did get a ton of ground balls yet again. So it's kind of like his first start. He's typically not been a ground ball pitcher. He got a bunch of them. But here's the problem. The dude throws, low 90s. He's got the curveball. But what we saw last night is what I think is the teams, once they've got the new book on him, he's pitched maybe a little bit differently from the past. But we saw Atlanta be really aggressive with him because, again, here's a guy who isn't walking any batters, right? He is throwing strikes. And he doesn't have the kind of stuff that gets swings and misses. Doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. So if I'm going up there as an opposing hitter, I'm going, wait a minute. So you're telling me this guy throws strikes and he doesn't blow it by me? He's going to pitch to contact? Hell yeah, dude. I'm sitting up there ready to tee off. Like, I'm going to look fastball and adjust to that curve if it comes in. And sure enough, if he hangs one, they're going to hit it a long way. So he got the ball on the ground. But if you square him up, it's going to go. And we've seen that. Those 2 home runs got out. That ended up being all the offense they needed, which, again, in fairness to Smiley, giving up 2 runs should not doom your team, right? So I want to put that out there. But my concern is that as he faces these good teams that have enough of a lineup that is going to figure him out, if they can go up there and be aggressive swinging at him, because, he's not going to walk guys, and he's not going to blow it by you. So what does that leave? As a hitter, I'm licking my chops with something like that, because if dude rolls a curveball up there, oh, buddy, that thing could get real fat real quick. So anyway, that's my concern there. Although, again, part of that is just because of the fact that the offense did not do anything at all to overcome those 2 runs. But continue with the breakdown.
Yeah, no, I think that's basically it. I mean, if you want to talk
breakdown,
going back to the booms and dooms, booms, there weren't many. Ian Happ, 3 for 9, a home run, 2 walks. He's still hot. He's looking really good. The starters were on the edge. They're not doomish. They're not quite boomish. 6 runs, 19 hits over 3 games. That's not bad. That's pretty good. That's a boom, I suppose. And in the bullpen, Scott Efros was looking really good. 3 innings pitched, no runs, 2 hits, no walks, and 3 strikeouts. So very solid there. Unfortunately, a lot more dooms there. With the Cubs offense would be a doom. 8 runs, averaging 2.7 runs per game. You're not going to win many games averaging 2.7 runs a game. 18 hits, which was a 189 average. 26 strikeouts. 26 and 10 walks.
Ugh.
Ooh, so their offense was just atrocious in this one. And so and they didn't really go up against any real studs here, pitching wise.
I don't know, man. Max Fried's pretty good. And Kyle Wright has been, Fried, here's the deal.
He's
and
not
I wrote
a stud,
about this. Well, he's pitching like one, but I think here's a dude who I could see kind of breaking out this year more so than he's been kind of hit or miss, but as I wrote about this, this is why you should read our not you, John, but the rest of the viewers out there and listeners later, is I try my best to put in enough work and find little things for the lineups. I won't get into the idiocy that's happened. I think I've talked about that before, so I won't get into the idiocy with people being like, I can just look up the lineup right here. Like that's not the point. That's like the smallest. That's 1 paragraph in the whole thing. But if you look at like Fried's changeup usage and the velocity that he was displaying, it was almost a direct carryover from Game 6 of the World Series when they were able to win and beat Houston. He started throwing the changeup a lot more, and I think that kind of a light bulb went off for him. And if he can do that, again, you're talking about with that being such a weapon, and of course he's dominated lefties as well as a left-handed pitcher, but if he can really use that change and dominate righties even more, and the velo is up on everything, he looks really good. But Kyle Wright's another one who so far, yesterday might have been his worst start of the season. So he had come into that just absolutely mowing down hitters. So while, maybe in terms of historically they were not, I'd say those two are pitching about as well. Wright's pitching as well as anyone in baseball right now. And Fried has a bit of a different style from what he's done in the past. So I was very, very concerned about both of those matchups going in. And, outside of Happ kind of getting after Fried on the right, which is, again, that's a really, really, really promising thing for me, is to see Happ hitting better from the right side. I mean, right now he's probably been, maybe the most consistent producer. Suzuki has been great,
sure.
but he's kind of been up and down a little bit. But I feel
he's
like
on my doom list.
Yeah, Happ has been that, and that's the big thing with him. It's early yet, but the one knock on Happ all the time has been that he's just not very consistent, and he'll fall into slumps. Some of that can come from being a switch hitter, right? And you slump on one side, it affects you. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. But that's something I wanted to point out.
No, all extraordinarily valid. Yeah, I mean, Ian Happ is, he's tied with Suzuki in terms of FWAR. They both have 0.9. Although Ian, like I mentioned, Suzuki is on my doom list. He went 2 for 13 in the series, 154 average, and struck out 5 times. Only had 1 extra base hit. And so that has really brought him back down to earth. Wilson Contreras, also not a great performance. He went 2 for 11, and those were both doubles. And he did score what ended up being the winning run on, was it whenever the Cubs won on Wednesday?
Happ technically scored the winning run, right? He
drove in.
Drove in the winning run. I just want to just somebody. I point that out because somebody will get on here. Somebody on Facebook is going to get really pissed if you mess up that detail.
So, but yeah, he's batting 182 in the series. Not great. No batter in this series had more than 2 hits. That there is a formula for lots of losses.
Yeah.
Ian Roberts had a rough outing, and Gibbons had a very rough outing as well. And so not real good all around. But I mean, honestly, if you look at it, it was more about the offense not really doing anything. And as you mentioned, okay, fine. I wasn't giving enough credit to Atlanta's pitchers. They did pitch well. They are good pitchers, if I have to say it. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's not really, really bad, and it's not really, really good. You know what I'm saying? This was just, if you had to kind of try to read what was going to happen in the future from this series, I just don't think you get a read one way or the other. It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly could have, I mean, if they don't come back in the, in the Wednesday game, right. If that, or not really come back, but because they let the Braves come back, but if they don't kind of bust out the boomstick there. But what we're seeing again is that, in the past we would lament that, they maybe had 3 hits and 2 of them were solo homers or whatever. Well, now it's like they're having 3 hits and they're all singles, right? That's kind of that is that there's not a lot if they are not doing everything right. And so here's, as we were looking at it and kind of the run scoring and everything else, I was looking at this today, and here you would think, right? So just logically, right? Let's set aside, if you can, and I know that that's probably not possible, but if we can remove context for a moment, and I told you, I would say, hey, John, my son's baseball team or this local high school team or whatever, they play small ball. They don't have a lot of kids who can hit real hard, but they're a small ball team. So you would think that would be, they try to draw their walks, they try to get singles, slap hits, move runners around. What would you also think that a small ball team without power, once they do reach base, which they do frequently, what would you maybe think that a team like that would do more of once they reach base?
Steal?
I would think so.
What happened? What happened? Gee, tell me what happened against Atlanta, because I know the answer to this.
I'm going to tell you what happened overall, or what has happened on the season, or hasn't happened. Because if we look across Major League Baseball, and let me just go ahead and sort this so I make sure I've got all the numbers correct here. So the Cubs have 4 stolen bases, which is tied for 29th. Detroit only has 2. And Detroit, boy, they've only got 8 homers. So But here's the other worrisome part, right? I would also think now part of that is aggressive offense in terms of like, okay, we know we don't hit the ball out of the yard a ton. We want to advance these runners and get guys in scoring position because, hey, runner on second could score from second base on a single, right? I would get it, but hey, first to third at best in most cases on a single at the same time. So I want that person. Hey, if I've got a runner on second, I've got a much better chance of scoring runs. Right now, here's the other thing that this would do is because at the same time, and this is we've talked about this already, but when we look at double plays, the Cubs have grounded into more double plays than any team in Major League Baseball. So getting runners in motion is going to eliminate, at least to some extent, right? Maybe you get out of the out at second base. Maybe you make the, you get the defense shifted over a little bit. You get somebody covering and you open up more of a gap. And so some of those singles can shoot through. But I'm looking at this and I'm saying, here's a team that is grounded into 22 double plays in 19 games.
Now, where does that rank in MLB?
That's first by a wide margin or last, depending on how you want to sort it. The Phillies are next at 18. And so, but the Phillies have hit more homers. They've scored more runs, right? They've just driven in more runs. They have more hits, everything else. The Phillies actually have more singles. The Cubs, oddly enough, have more doubles. But again, it goes back to some of the things we had talked about when I'm looking at this, and I've said for years, there's so many of these times where I said the Cubs need to be more aggressive with their base running. Whether that's just the hit and run, which again, you can do with a team that generally makes a lot of contact. Now, they didn't this past series, so maybe that's neither here nor there, but get some of these guys moving. Now, the other thing is, I don't know if it's a matter of just the players in general, if it's the game and the way that it's been coached and taught and learned of late, but I've seen some really, really shitty base running. Like Nico Horner.
Yeah, that
wasn't last night. Was that last night? Like, no, that was the Wednesday game, right? Where there was a single. Yeah, he was on first. There was a single out to right, and he's running. And he just stops at second base. And he was kind of like watching the play. Like, I don't think he was picking up Willie Harris, the third base coach. He just sort of stopped. And then, like, you see this dawning realization on his face, like, oh, crap, I was supposed to keep running. And then he sort of looks back over his shoulder and then just takes off for third.
It was almost like, did he think that ball went to the wall?
But he had then he would have kept going. Like, how is he not picking up the coach and going, but like he went and then he's looking back over his shoulder. It was kind of similar to, was it Ortega the other day that was doing that when he loafed out of the box? But it was like he had no intention of going to third at all. And then I think like too late, he realized Harris was waving him, but he'd already broken down and stopped. And then he's in no man's land. Like he got picked off yesterday. Like there are so many dumb things they're doing on the bases, and we talk about their slim margin for error. Well, when you ground into 22 double plays and you're not stealing bases and you're getting thrown out because you're doing stupid stuff with your running, and I don't mean to say that Nico Horner is a stupid baseball player. That's certainly not it. But that was just a dumb play that I was like, I was watching and going like, what in the hell is he doing?
Yeah, you don't see that type of a mistake very often.
No, it was like, really weird.
And that's where I think he just lost the ball. And for some reason, he must have thought that the ball went to the wall. That's the only thing that possibly explains it.
Yeah. Or like I said, the only, I could see where like, and sometimes this stuff happens, right? It's like the verbal equivalent of somebody says something and you're like, what? And then like the actual words that they said for some reason hit you like 2 seconds later, like you asked them kind of
that's me themselves. All the time,
right? And so and it felt like that to where it's like, okay, maybe he's coming around second and something, again, it was like I see Willie Harris waving me on, but I didn't think it was going to get past this. Now I'm so, oh crap, now I'm supposed to go because he waved me and now it's too late. But I just, those are the parts that bother me because again, it feels like when everything's going right, it's so fun to watch. That was what happened in that Brewers series to start off the season. That's what happened in the 21-0. I'm like, everything went right. And they didn't have those moments where they could just get derailed by a couple of dumb mistakes. But when you talk about bad base running, when you talk about not getting runners moving on base, not advancing them on things other than just hits, and then with all the double plays, there are so many opportunities for them to get screwed up because they just don't do some of those little things right. And just fundamentally, there are some problems there. Defensively, you know, again, where does VR play? He should never be on the left side of the infield ever again. Right. And those are all causing problems that they simply do not have enough firepower to make up for. And that's what worries me about this team is stuff like that. It's the dumb mistakes that bother me more than it is just
where you're not producing a lot of runs and you don't have a lot of power, you really can't afford to make dumb mistakes.
Right. And that's where I get down to is like, usually small ball type teams, like I bring up the Royals in 2015 are a good example of a team that just up and down the lineup, a lot of contact hitters. They had a great bullpen. And I don't necessarily want to be all small, but they bunted a ton. And a lot of people don't like that. I'm not saying I'm not, buck funting, right? But they did it because they knew that their bullpen could lock you down. And so they were like, hey, if we get a 1 or a 2 run lead, we're good. We get a runner on second, we're going to be able to advance him to third. We're going to be able to score him with a single. And it's those little things because the team that scores first wins most frequently. Well, the Cubs have a patient team that can reach base with walks and singles. But as we saw, if you don't string enough of those together, they've got no chance to score. And it's almost like they're just sitting back, like Ross is content with that. He's not forcing the issue at all. Like, you've got to be aggressive with this team. You can't just sit back and hope the other pitchers are going to give you enough stuff that you can make contact with, right? Because that's just not going to work. You got to get that runner on second base, man. And that's bothersome. And look, while I'm rolling, and then I'll shut up for a while, I also want to point out, like, you mentioned Efros, and he has been awesome. He's such a great dude, and I wrote about him yesterday. And it was cool because then he came in to pitch, but the usage there perplexed me because he comes in to get one out in the fifth inning or the fourth inning? Fifth, I think. Either way. Then he comes back out for the sixth, gets 3 outs pretty quick. And I'm like, cool. So I tweet something out. I'm like, hey, another 1.1. And I look, wait, he's back out for another. And I get that he can do the multi-inning thing, but it was just so weird. And then he had to get pulled after 2 outs because he gave up a couple singles. But I'm like, I felt like I was really worried there because Ross seems to have settled in. 6 of the Cubs' top 8 pitchers in terms of FWAR are all relievers. Okay. And all of them hit on Wednesday. And then a bunch of them pitched again on Thursday, or a few of them. And so I'm like, you can't overplay your hand, dude, because if this guy is in there, he's got the sidearm thing. His changeup, which he talked to us about, has been looking really good. He said, I talked to him recently. He said it's still feeling great. He's the way he's throwing them, and I wrote about that, so you can go find that out. The slider has been great. But if that reliever is being used back-to-back days, 3 times in 4 days, things like that, especially if this team is getting a good look at him over and over again, then some of that advantage gets lost. You got to watch it, man, because going out there and facing 7 batters is not ideal, like, especially if this guy's been used a lot. So I fear that we're moving into like some more Joe Madden territory with the whole, hey, I'm going to throw Steve Cishek out there 85 times, and I have 4 relievers that I trust, and they're just going to go till their arms fall off, and then, whatever. So I don't know, but that bothered me a little bit.
And so I just looked at the Cubs starters versus their relievers. They've got the 5th best ERA for their bullpen, has the 5th best ERA in baseball with a 2.79. A lot of that is Keegan Thompson. Obviously, he makes up the majority of those innings there. He came out, and it probably doesn't look that great, but it still looks good. Starters, 26th, 5.18 ERA. And a lot of that is Stroman blowing up. Hendricks had that one blow-up game. Smiley's been really good.
Leiter hasn't really helped out on that, but I'm still like, if you're only going to throw a dude for 2 innings, like, I'm struggling there, man. Like, at that point, Thompson should just be the starter, because you're basically, again, if you're just using a guy to tread water, it's just like, all right, the first sign of anything that looks like he's getting in trouble, we're pulling him. Like,
yeah.
If you give us 2, we're gonna feel. Then I don't know, man. What's the point? That's not an opener there. It's just like a dude who you hope gets you to Thompson without a deficit.
Hey, he hasn't allowed a run in the first 2 innings of any game this season.
I guess that's Just don't let him get to the kryptonite, baby. Just here you go.
3.
Yeah,
he has allowed a run in every single 3rd inning he's pitched. So I mean, I guess it makes sense from that perspective. That's kind of a case of David Ross just kind of working with what he's got. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, especially now that there's a setback. Like every day, there's something new with like Alec Mills isn't gonna be back for a while yet. Who knows what's going on with Wade Miley? He's still just like throwing bullpen sessions. So it's but I don't know. Surely there's somebody right that can give you 3.
Yeah. And I mean, offensively, when you look at the Cubs, we were talking about this before the show. They are 3rd overall in Major League Baseball on runs per game of 4.84. Now, that's great. That'd be super awesome if that held for 162 games. However, we know that they won one game 21-0, and they won another game 9-0. So if you take those 2 games out, they're averaging 3.65 runs per game. The median is 4, so that's below the median. That would put them in the bottom 3rd of the league for runs per game. And so where your starters are kind of not doing real great, but you kind of feel like Stroman's going to come back, right? I mean, if Stroman had not had those 2 blow-up games, your starting ERA would be substantially better.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of don't feel terrible about the starting pitching, except for when you start thinking about, all right, well, Leiter's not really a starting pitcher. And we know that we're going to have to do something there. The Cubs are going to have to do something there. They're going to lose 2 roster spots within the next couple of days by the end of the weekend. And so something there's going to have to give. I kind of feel like, if I had to guess, Hermosillo is probably going to get DFA'd because he doesn't have any options left, right?
Right. And I think, and that was, and which was kind of suck, right? He was a great feel-good story last year, being a Chicago kid, grew up a Cubs fan. But if you're looking at,
just hasn't performed.
Yeah, he hadn't really hit really well, and he's a right-handed hitter, right? I mean, they got Suzuki already. They got Happ, who would bat from the right side against a lefty. I mean, he can play a little bit of center field, but so can Ortega. And being a lefty batter and having Hayward, who's playing most of the center, and being a lefty batter, it does kind of feel that way. I mean, I can't think of anybody else. I have to assume Leiter is one of them as well.
That's where I was going.
Right. It got it like that. That to me is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hermosillo, unfortunately, unless, and it feels like Rivas changing to get an actual number. He's now wearing 36 instead of 67, right? Was he
feels
wearing
more
67?
permanent.
Is that what he was? It feels like that's kind of a sign that they're saying, like, hey, we're not going to option you on May 1st. And I mean, look, if it's between those 2, and I'm looking at a dude who provides me much better defense at first base than Schwindel does, and is also a left-handed hitter who can play a corner outfield spot, which could, potentially, whether that's pushing Happ over to center from time to time, whatever the case is, just, I think Hermosillo is probably the most expendable. If we're putting it in kind of that's a gross way to put it. I don't like it. It feels icky to me. But there's a little Hayward, but love it or hate it, he's actually been performing fairly well. I mean, if you look at the guys in the outfield, like, he hasn't been a drain on the team. He usually has like 2 or 3 ugly at bats.
He's batting 286. He's getting on base at a 390 clip. Now let's talk about Rafael Ortega, who's been leading off every freaking game and is 9th in on base percentage on the team. This makes no sense at all.
Why not
just put Wisdom up there?
Yeah, but like, why is it?
Rivas leads the team with a 563 on base percentage.
He's hitting like 480, 486 or something. Like, and again, if you're facing a right-handed pitcher and he's a lefty batter, and the one thing we knew about him whether he's got any pop. He's an on-base machine. I mean, he drew 2 walks. I think he was 0 for 1, but he drew 2 walks yesterday. Isn't that the guy? Like, again, he's not a speed burner, but who gives a shit? They've only stolen 4 bases. It's not like you're going to put, you know what I mean? Like, what do you expect? You're not putting a dude up there to steal it. This isn't Kenny Lofton. It's not Juan Pierre. Nobody's going to be out there just swiping bags. So why don't you actually put a dude up there who will, I don't know, get on base?
Do his thing. And I have to tell you, I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of Seiya Suzuki in the number 2 spot. I know, like, all the metrics say
he's been number 2 lately.
Spot. What's that?
He's been number 2 lately.
I said I'm not in favor of it.
No, I'm saying like number 2, like going to the bathroom.
You did a funny.
Yeah.
But I would prefer to see Suzuki move back to the 3rd or the 4th spot. And I don't care about the metrics and how many times you get up to base with runners on base and this, that, and the other thing. He hasn't performed well in the number 2 slot at all. He was performing a lot better further down in the lineup. I think you move him down and I mean, I'd say Rivas up top, stop batting Ortega. I mean, honestly, if Ortega's left-handed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if he wasn't left-handed, he'd probably be somebody who's going to get cut as well. But you kind of need that left-handed bat, I suppose, right? I mean, we could talk about Jonathan VR, who hasn't been real great. He's been decent offensively, but his defense has been just atrocious.
Yeah.
And so, I mean,
well,
here's what I'd like to see.
You can't play him. You can't play VR. The whole thing with him is he's supposed to be versatile, and he used to be fast too. I mean, he's a guy who's been stolen 30+ bases in the past. Like, ideally, that would be a guy that but anymore, I mean, he's kind of proven that he can't play anywhere other than second base. I mean, it just doesn't look good. And there are guys like, listen, it's small samples. You can have a couple bad games. You can see that, but he's like backing up on balls at third base that just, it looks like I'm not saying he is scared, but he's letting the ball play him is more where, and that's just something you can't have, especially when you have a guy. Wisdom's a good defensive third baseman, right? So like you're losing so much there defensively that even having a guy who can switch hit isn't really worthwhile. So yeah, it'll be maybe I would love for this not to be a common theme, but I'm not saying this is an offense that like suddenly should be, the 27 Yankees or something, but it just doesn't feel, and I think this is something, repeating Monday, but it just doesn't feel like it's being maximized for what it can do. It does not feel like guys are being put in the right spots in the lineup, and then once they are in the lineup, wherever they are, there's not the right amount of calculated aggressiveness to make the most out of what otherwise is a pretty pedestrian lineup when you talk about just the mix of power and everything else. It's just not there. So in the absence of being able to bomb away on home runs, you've got to do something to advance those runners in ways other than just getting hits. And they aren't doing it, and it's showing. They're killing rallies, and I think a lot of that is preventable.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're going to kind of, go with somebody who's not doing well at the top of the lineup, why not plug Madrigal in there? He's supposed to be the guy that's the contact guy. He hasn't been. But, I mean, that would make a lot more sense to me than Ortega all the time. Is totally doesn't make sense. So I agree 100% with you, Rivas at the top of the lineup. I mean, you could go, you've got Rivas and then any combination of Suzuki, Contreras, and Happ, in the next 3 spots. Like I said, I don't love Suzuki in the number 2 spot. So maybe you put Happ there and then have Suzuki and Contreras follow or flip those 2 or something like that. And then you kind of, you've got Horner and you've got Wisdom with some power, Schwindel and, Madrigal kind of to me, that makes a lot more sense. And it's just, I don't know. Some things don't make sense, but I think you've got enough data at this point to be able to make these types of decisions. So if we continue to not see David Ross make decisions that are quite obvious to us, then it makes you wonder a comment that we just got that says, how much input does the front office have? And it makes you think that maybe the front office is driving some of these decisions if they don't change soon.
Well, you almost, are they hoping that Ortega has a couple of good games and they can flip him, right? Because they're like, hey, we got a roster crunch on the way. Hopefully this dude's got enough value that we can move him somewhere because, I'll beat this horse one more time. A lot of this time Ortega has spent as that leadoff guy. He's also the DH. Like, that's the part that really baffles me. If you're going to have the guy as a hitter only, and he's not really hitting. I mean, he did get, a leadoff single yesterday, one of their 3 hits, right? But still didn't amount to anything. But if Alfonso Rivas should be, and his defense is such that Schwindel should probably be the DH, right? If we think about it in those terms, like he's probably best served as a DH in most cases, simply because Rivas plays better defense at first base and he's a left-handed hitter. But if you're going to have a guy leading off as your designated hitter, I feel like it should be a guy who's been a better hitter and not somebody who you're just kind of waiting on and hoping, all right, please show us a flash. All right, maybe this game. Come on, man. I know you got it in you. Versus a guy who's like, oh, I've seen you've got it in you. Like, you're hitting really well. No.
Yeah, a guy that makes the pitcher have to think from the very first batter.
Yeah, because if nothing else, like, again, that's a dude. Rivas has a great knowledge of the strike zone. He works great plate appearances. That's the kind of hitter you want up there at the top. And Ortega's just not that guy, right? He's got a little pop. He can be pretty good, but
Ortega has 49 plate appearances at the top of the order and only 4 in other positions. That is shocking.
Albert Almora-ish.
It really is.
It's like you're looking at it going like, okay, this doesn't really fit, right? I get it, once in a while, okay, hey, shake things up, but like, not over and over, dude. This is not the jump start thing is over. I don't like it. I just don't. And I know he's, again, was working a really good on base percentage relative to his average, but whatever, man. I feel like there are some things though that it just feels like maybe they're showcasing him. That's the only thing I can come up with.
But they're not.
Right. Well,
you're showcasing how bad he is.
Yeah, it's not working out real well in terms of, are you going to be able to trade him once things close up? So I don't know. But yeah, I'm with you still. It's either Ortega or Hermosillo, probably Hermosillo. Excuse me. And then Leiter, and they'll go from there.
And then when you drop Leiter, either you're getting Miley back or
then you got to drop somebody else.
You're moving Thompson into the starting role.
But you got to, once Miley comes up, they're going to have to move somebody else, right? Because and then once Mills comes back, they're going to have to drop somebody else. I think we mentioned this on Monday. Like I could see Roberts maybe getting a little bit more time back down in AAA for a while. Like the slider plays, man. The slider has been great. The cutter has been giving him a lot of trouble. That's the one he's been kind of getting burned on because it's hanging out over the plate a little bit too much. So I could maybe see that happening, especially with the crunch they've got there with enough guys. It's going to be very interesting to find out. It'll be at least another 2 weeks, I would say, before Mills is activated because he was supposed to have pitched today in a rehab start. That got scratched. So I think they'll probably move him back at best. He probably has another bullpen to throw before another start, which might come in a week. So, I think you're looking at then it'd be another 5 days at least before he could pitch for the Cubs. So I think at a minimum week and a half to 2 weeks on Mills. And then Miley hadn't thrown a rehab appearance. So, what do we get? You're looking at mid-May, I think is really what we're at in a best case scenario. So it just feels like they're kicking the can down the road, and like for what? Because by the time those guys come back, ostensibly this team could be out of it already. They're, not like anybody's saying, oh man, they can still win the division. I don't think anybody's really holding those hopes, but there's not. Hey, a run could I'm speaking in theory. I'm not trying to be like rose-colored glasses guy. I'm saying like legitimately out of it. And if you're missing 2 of those guys, then what the hell then? Now it's, oh shit, now we got to shoehorn you back into the staff. And we're 10 games out, so I don't know. It's all weird.
Yeah, it is weird. And part of the issue is that, who comes up if Steele can't hold it down and he's going to be pitching in this weekend series. If Steele continues to struggle and you have to go and send him back down, where are you getting another lefty from? DJ Hers? I mean, he's
No, he won't. Yeah, he's not
I
coming
know,
up.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. It
Well,
was a
yeah,
joke.
but okay, good. Well, although the way he's pitching, I mean,
But that's what I'm saying.
You might,
it's a joke, but it's like,
but it's kind of like, well,
you've
I
got
don't
no
know.
left-hand options.
He might be able to make it work. Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing is like, ideally it would have been Miley, right? And now you still got your two lefties, although the difference there is pretty stark. Although, yeah, I think Steele ends up he probably ends up back in AAA at some point because they can, and because it would be kind of strange to have three lefties all in the rotation. Not like you can't do that, but just again, given how many right-handed hitters there are out there, going with three lefties would be a little bit interesting. But I don't know. It really, and I know all teams do this, but I feel like the Cubs, as much as any team, or maybe more so, but I follow them much more closely, obviously. Just they kick the can down the road so far on a lot of these kind of organizational decisions that, whether it's Hayward or whatever you want to look at, if you just rip the Band-Aid off now and move forward with the guys who are going to be able to make a difference for you, as you push into the next couple of years, and start getting some of those guys in there and really make some decisions that are aimed at 2 years from now instead of now. And even being aimed at now doesn't really make much sense. But I don't know. I just I don't know.
Unknowns going on there. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. And I mean, when you start talking about Jason Hayward, I mean, like he's like, as you mentioned earlier, if you look at his offensive stats, he's doing well.
Yeah.
He's got his OFF, his off is 1.4 for the season, which isn't terrible. And he's batting 286. So he's not going anywhere. That's for sure. I mean, that's just kind of what it is. So looking forward, we've got 3 against the Brewers that you kind of feel like the Brewers probably you really want to kind of sweep this series if they can. They've got Hendricks going against Hauser tonight at 7:10 Central. You got Justin Steele against Eric Lauer on Saturday, and then Marcus Stroman against Corbin Burns on Sunday.
Burns.
And so, yep, I mean, the Brewers are, they've got good pitching, and you feel good about Hendricks if he continues to be good Hendricks.
Mm-hmm.
You feel, you don't know what's going to happen with Steele or Stroman. But I mean, at the end of the day, the Cubs offense needs to get going. It needs to be more than just, say, a Suzuki turning things around here. It needs to be Wilson Contreras turning things around and getting on a hot streak. I mean, it definitely Wisdom and Schwindel need to get going if the Cubs are offensively going to start getting some runs. They really haven't shown the power yet. I think they each have 1 home run?
Wisdom's got at least 2, if not 3. Schwindel's got a couple, right? A couple of oppo shots. Wisdom hit that big one. Obviously the last one was big. So
Wisdom has 3 home runs. Schwindel has 2.
Yeah, Schwindel's I think were both opposite field.
Not bad.
He hit the one in Colorado that he kind of like scooped up there, and but I mean, still, like Wisdom was supposed to be the guy that started hitting tanks. You know what I mean? Like you'll take the high strikeouts, you just got to hit a bunch of tanks. But that's not happening, and a lot of other guys aren't either. So it's just Ugh.
He's striking out at a 38% clip.
Hey, that's still like 12% better than 12 points better than what it was after the first couple weeks. So,
gosh,
that's okay. I'll take 35 to 40% strikeouts from him as long as he's hitting dongs.
Sure, but he hasn't been
right.
Okay, and so and they need to have guys on base when he does hit the home runs. So what are you looking at? We've got a few more minutes here. What are you looking at in this Brewers series?
I mean, if we're looking at results, I think the Cubs will be, I don't want to say lucky. I'm feeling like 1-2. I am very, I'm afraid of Sunday, man, because I think Burns is going to be, he did not look good that first time out. I think he's going to be out for blood.
Really bad.
I don't like it. I hope that's a pitcher's duel at least. Hendricks seems to do really, really well against the Brewers on opening day. He had the complete game shutout in 2020. He just dominated them this year. I feel like he'll probably pitch really well. I mean, I think we're going to see a couple of these first two games. I think we'll see fairly solid performances overall. The Brewers have a terrible offense. That's the thing I think to remember here is their pitching's really good. Their offense is bad. So you're generally not going to look at a game where anybody's going to run away with it. And so I think that's where the Cubs kind of maintain a lot of chances there.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen much lately to tell me that the Cubs offense is all that much better. So I do think we see three low score. There's probably going to be one of them that's weird, but I think three relatively low scoring affairs. But I think the Brewers' superior firepower on the pitching side ends up getting them 2 out of 3.
Yeah. It's hard for me just to go straight up, like just say what's going to happen, because I think if Ortega is at the top of the lineup, then I think the Cubs are going to get swept. That's my prediction. That's just that factor alone. But however, if Ortega is not at the top of the lineup for 2 of the games, then I think the Cubs will win 2 out of 3. And I'm not saying that they will win both the games that he's not at the top of the order. I just think that that's my way of thinking. I really want to see, I think, like you said, Rivas at top, number 1, Happ number 2, Suzuki 3 or 4, with Contreras 3 or 4. I think that makes the most sense based on the stats that we've seen and the performances that we've seen. And I think if we can get, good Hendricks and good Stroman, yeah, but you're right. Going up against Burns on Sunday is going to be a tough one. So I'm going to say, all things being equal, I'm going to say the Cubs are going to go 1-2 in the series. But like I said, I'm going to qualify that by saying if Ortega is not at the top of the order for 2 games in the series, they will win 2 games. So it's very specific.
Yes.
So I'm going to have to write that down because there's no way I'm going to remember that come Monday.
Well, this is all recorded. So.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I can go back and listen to it.
So out there for the whole world.
That'd be weird.
Usually people will remind you of it when you make predictions. People always love to pull the gotcha. Oh, you remember when you said this?
Yep, that's why. That's why I like.
I say a lot of stuff.
Yeah. See, I kind of have 2 different predictions in there. Yeah. And so, and the Cubs have a day off on Monday, which will be nice. And then they play the White Sox at Wrigley Field. And so that'll be a 2-game series and then another day off. So that'll be good that they have another day off, because then they play multiple games. What is it? 3 or 4 games against the Dodgers. So
they got to go out to San Diego. Oof.
Yeah. It's like, what do they have?
Times, baby.
Yeah. What do they have? 3 against the Dodgers? Yeah, 3 against the Dodgers. And then they travel to San Diego, and then things get a little easier. You got the D-backs, the Pirates, the D-backs, the Reds. That sounds tasty.
Ooh, who knows? But they could gain some steam, baby.
So, I mean, I think we had said that as long as the Cubs are around 500, once they get through this little part of the schedule, that, I mean, they could end up all right by the end of May. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, we will talk to you guys on Monday, the Cubs day off, and hopefully we're talking about a Cubs series win. So until then,
have a good weekend, everybody.
Y'all have a good weekend. See ya.